Hey, it's Richie. Welcome to another track guide. This time we're doing the ARCA car at Bristol Motor Speedway. We're using the single road pit road version of the track, so the blue line goes basically all the way around the corner in 3 and 4. You have to enter actually going into 2. You go all the way down the back stretch through 3 and 4, all the way down the front stretch, and then you exit in turn 1. So yeah, so ARCA car at Bristol. Bristol is an interesting racetrack just in itself. With the way this car runs, it's usually a very, very tough track to pass on. You either have to find somebody running low and go outside of them, or you're going to have to do work really hard to get under them and maintain that underneath them to be able to pull off a pass here. So passing is key. Track position is key here. So with that said, let's take a look, see. Our AccuWeather forecast. Again, we're using the iRacing defaults here. 78 degrees, 55% humidity, partly cloudy, afternoon start, wind 2 mile an hour. This time I think it's in the north. I think normally it's northwest, and a 25% track state. In the garage, we went ahead and I think left it very close to default, but 12 to 1, negative 11 on the offset, and 60% on the rear on the brake. So again, we're using a lot less brake here than we normally do, and a lot of that is to help that transition if you are hitting the brake to not push up the banking, but to actually make a turn. I do think actually that I did put a percentage of brake, 1% of brake back into it when I was actually running at the end. So that would actually be 61% rear brake, not 60. So with that being said, let's take a look, see at the qualifying lap. All right, so strangely enough, I ran my fastest lap, my qualifying lap, actually the first lap of the actual run that I did. So we're going to start off again showing you the qualifying lap, and then we'll move into the race lines later. And really what I think I need to show you here is basically the line doesn't change from qualifying to your race. This is one of the only tracks that this happens on, where it's pretty much the exact same. It's the exact same thing from qualifying to race. There are a couple different things that you could do in the race that you're not going to do in qualifying, but basically it's the same line. It doesn't matter if you're trying to go fast, your fast lap, or if you're 30 laps into the run. It's basically the exact same thing. All right, so we're going to go right after it right here. There is this, we're going to get our best lap here on our first lap. So we come out of the corner, stay in the apron till the blue line. We're going to go down the straightaway, go up high in 3 and 4 here to get a great run coming out of 4 for the front stretch. We're going to come down. Well, I'll go through it in detail when this is over. So let's take a look at the lap here. And that's my lap right there. That would be my qualifying lap. It's a 15.055. I guess it's going to be a pretty decent lap. You know, it could be different for every race server or whatever. So let's take a look, see at the lap in detail here. All right, so we come down out of the pits again, as we normally do. We run up high on 3 and 4 here to get that run down the front stretch. There's grooves at Bristol. So as we go through here, you're going to hear me say the low line, the first seam, and then the second seam. So the second seam is the high line. The first seam is kind of the middle line. And then obviously the bottom transition from the apron to the racetrack is the low line here. So we're running up here by the seam. Come off the corner, as much input gas as we can. You can see I got a little loose there. I had to come out of it. Then we go down into turn 1 here. We start turning into the corner about where we hit this, the front of the car hits this safer barrier right here. But we lift right around the UN, was it UNHO? The UNHO University sign right there is where we about to lift, and we hit a little bit of brake as we get down into the corner here. Not a lot of brake, just a little brake to get the car just to whoa down a little bit. You can see I'm just trying to trail brake down, and I run the first seam here. So you could see the seam is right here, and I'm basically underneath, maybe with the right sides on that seam right there as I roll through the middle of the corner. And then pick up the throttle a little bit. Again, partial throttle. You don't want to get right on the throttle right there. You'll spin out. Partial throttle. Then we come up the racetrack like you do normally on a track. And down the backstretch we go. Start turning in right around where the ZMAX sign is on the backstretch. You want to start turning in. And then we're going to lift right before we get to the Food City sign right there. Again, lifting and a little bit of brake down into the corner. And this time I'm actually right underneath, again, pretty much the same location. Here is that seam that I was talking about. Pretty much the same location here in 3 and 4 as it is in 1 and 2. The main difference here is in 1 and 2, you stay on that seam even exiting the corner. But here in 3 and 4, you actually want to try to almost diamond the racetrack, and you want to come off the seam and come this way off the track, off the corner. And the reason for that is that the turn 4 is tighter than turn 2. Even though the track looks very symmetrical, it's actually not. And turn 4 is always going to be tighter, and that's where you're going to hit the wall. So if you were to continue to stay up here and follow the seam off the racetrack, off the corner, you're going to bounce off that corner every single time. The car is going to get tight. So what you want to do is you want to kind of come in and then kind of cut this turn 4 corner a little bit so that you can straighten out the exit of turn 4 a little bit. And you got to be careful doing that because that's where the car will want to get loose, specifically on the bottom. So, and that's basically a lap around Bristol in general. I call this the qualifying lap, but this is the same lap that we're going to run. This is the same lap that I run throughout the entire run here at Bristol. The only thing that really changes is your entry speed, a little bit of brake to try to get the car to rotate, but it's basically the same line from beginning to end here. All right, so let's take a look at a race lap here. This is the 3rd lap on a run. Heading down, we're going to lift it, turn in at the UNHO. You can see I'm rolling the corner here. I'm a little higher than I was in qualifying, just because you want to save those tires, so you want to kind of roll the top, the little bit in the middle of the corner as opposed to the bottom. In 3 and 4 here, again, I'm rolling a little bit higher. You can see the seam is down here now, but basically the same line as qualifying. The only difference is it's a tad bit higher than I ran in qualifying. The reason being is that qualifying, the lower you are, the less time it takes you to get around the racetrack. So if you can run that, the lower you can run with keeping the most speed, you'll get a better qualifying lap. As the race goes on, the lower you are on the racetrack, the looser the car will be coming off the corner. So we run right around that first seam, either with it in the middle of the car or just below the car. And the main reason for that is that it's progressive banking. So right above that seam is a little bit more banking, which means that you get a little bit less loose as you go through the corner. But basically the same lap as we did in qualifying. We're going to go here. We'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We'll take a look at the 10th lap, actually. And you can see I've gone from basically that was a 15.2 to a 15.4. It's very similar lap times throughout the run here. You'll lose a couple tenths, maybe almost up to a second at the end of a full run. But as I'm going to show you here, it's the same. We're 10 laps in. We're going to be running the exact same line going down. Here's our seam right here, right above the seam, rolling into the throttle right here, partial throttle before we get the full throttle to come out of the straightaway, get a little loose. So we lift, drive through the looseness. Here into 3 and 4, here's our seam again. Basically the same. We're going to cut down and across the seam to come off the corner. to make it a better run on the straightaway right there. And that's the 10th lap. And, you know, it's going to be the same lap no matter what area of the run you're in. That's Bristol. It just is what it is. But what I did want to show you is you can run a little bit different line, and you'll see a lot of guys running this. So I always try to run the mid line, mainly because most guys run the top here. I do not like running the top. It is not my thing. It's one of the reasons why I don't think I like Bristol. It's not one of my favorite. I'm not a rim rider. I don't do it very well. I end up bouncing off the fence. So I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm actually about to show you that you can, but it's not my thing. So I run the middle of the track, and mainly I do that to be different. And you can't, it's very hard to pass somebody when they're running the exact same line you are. So I like to be proficient at running the middle of the track so that I can catch somebody and have an option to pass them without having them to make a mistake or, you know, possibly running into trouble. So let's take a look-see at this lap. So here I go down in the corner, and instead of going down here to that seam, I'm up here on this seam. And it's basically the same line, just on the seam up top here. You do get a much better run off the corner and down the straightaway. But like I said, you live by the sword up here, and you can die by the sword up here. Again, here we are up here, and then we're still going to cut the corner down to the second seam here off the corner. And again, that's just to avoid running in the fence there. So that's the high line at Bristol. It looks exactly like the midline and the low line at Bristol. It's basically Bristol. So there's really not a lot of tips and techniques here. That's basically it. Your goal is to get around here as fast as you can. You do that by, you know, unfortunately not getting to the throttle immediately. It's using a little bit of partial throttle to not get overly loose coming off the corner. But that's it. That's Bristol. Unfortunately not one of my favorite tracks, but it's, you know, a track that I have had success at before. Yeah, that's it. Go have fun. You know, like and subscribe to the channel if you like what we're doing here, and we'll see everybody for the next video.